everyone, I'm Paolo Abrera, and one of the very few silver linings from last year's lockdown was the brief respite that it proved to the environment. For the first time in a very long time, we could breathe clean air in the city again. Now, roads were decongested and gas emissions were at an all-time low. But these improvements were only temporary and not nearly enough to mitigate the environmental crisis that we all face. Mother Nature still needs our help. Now, the work that needed or that we need to restore our Earth, well, it really never stops. Joining me today are some of the men and women who aim to do just that. Now, our first guest is Gab Mejia. He is the WWF-Philippines National Youth Council and National Geographic Explorer. And we'd like to say thank you for joining us today, Gab. Our next guest is Dumaliang, the Managing Trustee of Masungi Georeserve. We're glad that you could join us, Anne. And last but not the least, let's all welcome Fiona Faulkner. She is the CEO of the Freshest and president of the Plastic Solution. I want to say welcome to Fiona. It's an honor to have all of you here with us. Now, guys, we have so much to talk about, but first, I'd like to start with your own experiences during the lockdown. Now, I know everyone here is a staunch supporter of Mother Earth. We wouldn't be gathered here together if we weren't. But on top of what you already do, have you made any, let's call it lifestyle changes that have helped the environment? And do you plan on sticking to those changes even after the pandemic? Are these habits that are here to stay? Let's hear from everybody. Let's start off with Gab.
Yeah, I think the pandemic really took a big toll on the lifestyle as a photographer and as someone who works on the field with conservation sites. Mm-hmm. There's no travel and the lockdowns really, it made me really slow down and take time to appreciate what I have, because before I would always travel or would always be working on different fields, and now I'm just stuck at home.
Do you think now that you'll not travel less, but maybe choose your trips with a little bit more purpose?
Yeah, I think traveling with more intent would be the direction that I would be heading. Really working on sites and, actively and engaging more on niche sites or on my advocacies.
Now, on the subject of travel, of course, Anne, Masungi is one of those places that people love to visit. What are some of the things that, the lessons that you've learned during this pandemic?
There were lots of changes that people had to go through because of the pandemic, but what I noticed was that our practice in conservation and sustainable tourism has allowed us to adjust much faster. So we've always been mindful about carrying capacities, densities, always being outdoors. We don't actually have indoor spaces.
Right.
So that came out a little smoother for us. We've also already put up a garden, actually. Just planting some herbs, some vegetables. We're already reforesting 2,000 hectares, but we still ended up doing that. So that was a welcome addition in the last year.
So the work certainly does continue. Fiona, what about you? What are some of the changes that you've had to, roll with the punches, so to speak, when it comes to how we live life now during the pandemic? And are those habits here to stay?
I started an urban farm at my workplace, so I can encourage everyone to try and plant more things at home. And in order for me to really convince them, I had to do it on site at work, and they saw how easy it was. So as well, I'm definitely more strategic with my movements now because of the restrictions. So when I have to go and check on our farms, I make sure that I make the most out of every trip.
Well, listen, guys, the lifestyle choices that we make definitely impact the environment. That's one thing for sure. But even before the pandemic, consumers, particularly the younger ones like you guys, were already very conscious about supporting the environment. I mean, we've seen how important it really is. And supporting environment-friendly brands is certainly something that a lot of people have come on board to. Now, how do you think this affects the way conglomerates do business? Do you think the way the younger generation has really sort of embraced a little bit more of consciousness when it comes to the environment is going to shape the way these big brands do business from this point on?
Yeah, I think I can start in a way that, these big businesses really is something that we should ask if they're actually doing something. And like for us, for us youth or for us people here on, the local grassroots side or the initiatives, is that we're not really seeing so much of these big businesses to inspire, more of the local movement or the smaller groups to really work and push for like the targets or the advocacies for climate change or like for biodiversity conservation. So I think there really needs to be this visibility and transparency first before we can even, bring on this dialogue with them.
Okay, you guys agree with that? And Fiona?
I think what we're seeing now is like a merging of the top down and the bottom up approach. So we have the big corporations trying to make small changes in their processes and their products to be more environmentally sound. And then you have smaller, businesses and organizations also doing the same. So there's kind of emergence between the two. And I guess as consumers in the younger demographic, we're the targeted audience for that. So
yeah. How do we then judge, though, how sincere a business is about helping the environment or not? While I have you there, Fiona, why don't you react to that?
I think it really comes down to knowing the company and the products you're supporting. If they can be more transparent about those things, then that adds to why we would buy into anything. So I think transparency is key, and even when a company is shifting into more sustainable practices, we'd like to know.
Okay, I mean, we're looking forward to all these shifts, to all these changes in habits and packaging, the way businesses are run. But there are innovations out there that are already, making the world a better place. What do you think some of these innovations are that are already in practice, something that everybody can really get on board about?
I guess I'd like to start with a model rather. Right? We're talking about innovations, or you can be talking about changing your systems and also changing the products that you make, right? In pursuit of, say, a more circular economy instead of a more linear one. So that's definitely something that I'd like to see more of when it comes to multinational companies, really seeing the idea of green being integrated into their blueprint, into their business practices, more than it being a CSR activity or a marketing stint, which we all know is in this day and age is called greenwashing already. So I'm looking forward to seeing more companies really take accountability for the work that they do, considering their size, considering the resources that they have at hand, because we're seeing a lot of smaller businesses be able to adapt nimbly and really understand the call for the climate crisis and response to the climate crisis.
Yeah, I think and adding to that, we really have to define first what pushing forward for innovation means. Because a lot of people think, okay, innovation might be like applying new science or like new technology, like renewable energy. But you also have to look and think like maybe embracing traditional knowledge or like indigenous knowledge in conservation, or like from these lessons that we can learn in creating our products or creating new innovations is something that we should also consider. Like embracing local traditional knowledge is also an innovation in itself, And more to that, I think some models, for example, like Masungi is a perfect model also, being there and seeing how these big groups or organizations are actually doing something for sustainability, or planting trees or reforesting areas, protecting watersheds for solving and mitigating the effects of the climate crisis.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think what this pause has done for everyone is allow us to see what's important, what we really need to sustain ourselves, and it really isn't much. It's clean water, clean, healthy food, and fresh air. So I think now more than ever, we should push on with our environmental advocacies and really establish education on why things are better, why the air is cleaner, and so people can have a look at what processes stopped during the pause, the lockdown, and what industries really affected our situation prior to the lockdown. So it's a good chance for everybody to ask why and see how things are better and really understand it.
Right. While many businesses and production has slowed down, there's also many shifts to more sustainable production methods and products in general. But there's no denying that the climate crisis will always be there, and it's a very pressing issue. But first and foremost, I think right alongside that, perhaps we need to think about how we're going to get over the hump of this predicament that we're in. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and that has given rise to this amazing increase in PPEs, in face masks, in disposable items, in our need to keep everything sanitary and clean. We're generating an amazing amount of waste, which it's a skyrocketing figure, and it really is something that's going to be a nightmare to deal with in the years to come. While I have you here, what are you doing to help minimize medical waste, and what advice can we give to other organizations to address the growing problem?
Personally, what am I doing to curb my plastic use is what I've always been doing is not using single-use plastic. So trying my best to do things reusable. So I've had the same reusable mask this whole time, and I just, throw it in the washing machine when I need to. And it is a very difficult situation because sterilization, sanitation is the priority. And right now, the most effective way is to use the single-use plastics. So I think more than anything, we need to practice segregation so we can treat all of this plastic use waste separately from everything else.
Okay, let's shift our discussion more towards the economic impact of going green. There is a general notion that if you're pro-planet, if you like to run your business according to green ideals, then you must be against profit. There surely, it's been proven that there's a way to combine all three in the classic triple bottom line. What do you think about the idea that many people have yet to sort of get on board the idea that the people, profit, planet can all happen together and really do go hand in hand, and it's the best way to figure out a business?
We're in the 21st century. The internet is around. I think it should be quite a given to see that there are lots of businesses that have become very successful while balancing all three. If you're really concerned about business for the long term, while caring for environment and the people who exist around you, sustainability shouldn't be very difficult to pursue.
All right, now on that line of discussion, sustainability, getting your work done, enjoying your work, in your own line of work, perhaps, what are the biggest challenges of choosing to go green? And how do you find ways to go around that, or to offset certain givens? I'm talking to, let's say, Gab. Travel, photography, moving around requires jumping on a plane. We all know that flying is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases out there. Yet it's a necessary thing. What can we do to, even out those carbon credits? What can we do to make the idea more palatable to ourselves, where we don't guilt trip ourselves into just staying put? How do we find ways to do what we need to do and feel good about the work that we do? Gab?
Yeah, I think that's something really important to talk about, since, as someone who travels or work in journalism, you really have to sometimes fly planes to go to Mindanao or Visayas. And I've been really called out, oh, you're traveling so much and you have so much carbon emissions. How do you offset it? And it's a real question. And one thing that I'm really advocating for is for wetland advocacy. So wetlands are natural climate solutions. And one of the work that we're doing is really more focusing on the backyard conservation sites, such as Agusan Marsh, and conserving and protecting the Agusan marshlands. Because these ecosystems, what Anne said a while ago, restoring these ecosystems, they help mitigate, the effects of climate crisis. So I think that's also one way, involving and engaging yourself in these natural climate solutions or the restoration of ecosystems. It could be as simple as maybe, management and reforestation.
All right. Okay, Fiona, what are you most optimistic about as more and more companies integrate going green or green practices into their line of work, into your line of work? What is there to really sort of look forward to?
I'm looking forward to everyone having a baseline understanding of sustainability and the environment. That's what I'm looking most forward to, because the biggest challenge in my line of work was getting everyone on the same page, because there's, everyone comes from a different background, different life experiences. And I think now as we move forward with, sustainability, the future in mind, and I feel like starting at, the public education level, moving forward, we should have a baseline of environmental education, sustainable education. So yeah, that's what I'm looking most forward to, is everyone on the same page about it.
Okay, that's a perfect lead into my next question, and a subject that I'd like everybody to chime in on. Now, recently it was reported that the cherry blossom season in Japan had its earliest peak in 1,200 years. It was extremely early this year, and experts say there's no other suspect other than climate change. But even with this kind of overwhelming scientific evidence, there are still some people who try to discredit the urgency and reality even of climate change. And I think this is a perfect sort of jump off point from what you were talking about. We all have to get on the same page, and we all have to accept certain givens that climate change is there in the first place. Let's talk about combating this kind of misinformation. It gets frustrating sometimes, and I think we're all on the same page, but how do we deal with naysayers? How do we deal with people who just can't seem to appreciate how this affects them in a very real way? I want to hear from all of you on this, and chime in on that.
In Masungi, we always try to engage our guests, our visitors. In conservation, we try to help them regain their affinity with nature, their empathy for it. I guess a lot of us would say that, right? A lot of this disjoint, a lot of the misdeeds that we do in pursuit of sustainability happens because of this apathy and this lack of connection. Yeah. When in truth, we are part of nature instead of apart from it. So regaining that should definitely be at the forefront, allowing people to understand their impact, the impact of their work and the spaces they move in. For instance, in tourism, in other countries, before you get to move into a particular biodiversity area, you need to go through a certification on understanding the biogeography, right? Because there's no way that you can protect something that you don't understand. So a lot of work definitely has to be placed on that. I had this conversation with a business consultant during a climate crisis conference, and it was fascinating because his viewpoint was that, we have technology. The climate crisis will always continue on. We have the technology will help us adapt, right? But then the question there, and I think this is a question a lot of young people ask, is how morally correct would that be? When we know that a lot of people who have the resources can keep up, but a lot of vulnerable groups, a lot of vulnerable communities won't be able to adapt at the same time. I guess that's a particularly huge concern for us young people. So I hope we can all move together faster because 2030 is upcoming. That's already very soon. We need quick action from everyone. Everyone really needs to chime in.
Yeah, you've done a lot of traveling. You've done your share of photography, obviously. You've probably seen firsthand how climate change has affected, from the pictures you take, from the images that you share. Surely that's a great way to get that message and to drill that message into people who appreciate your work.
Yeah, that's true. I think working in the visual storytelling side, it really helps a lot in a way, because one example is working in the Agusan Marsh, is that the governors or some of the politicians there didn't know actually the effects of climate change in the marsh, their backyard. And when they saw the photos, they didn't even know that there were peatland fires that were happening, or fires on these wetlands. And that resulted into an action when we communicated these photos and these stories to the politicians, and when they started investing with the rangers or the Bantay Danaos or the lake guardians of the marsh. So I think a lot of sometimes a lot of this misinformation is that people are just aren't really aware, or they're ignorant, and they just really need to see the real picture, the real faces, the things that are happening, at the forefronts, for people to understand that it is happening in my home, that it is happening in my backyard, and I need to do something about it.
And it doesn't get any better than a literal, real picture that you would obviously be able to share. Fiona, how do we combat misinformation? People who aren't receptive to the message, And how do we get everybody on the same page, as you put it?
I think we have to make the problems relatable to people. So something as simple as there's a shortage of pork, for example. No one would think twice of it, but if we reveal that, oh, it's because we have an ASF outbreak, the African swine flu outbreak, which led to a decline in pork. And how does that all relate to me at the end of the day? Well, you're paying more for pork because of something that's happening globally. So we're taking these problems and making them digestible for people to understand. And it starts with their day-to-day routines.
All right. Well, on that subject, again, it's a perfect in to the next area of discussion as we come sort of full circle. From people who need to appreciate the issue more, we come to people who are on board. And I've been in this position before, where you appreciate the problem and it causes a certain sense of analysis paralysis, because the problem is so big, it's so pervasive. And it does seem so gargantuan that you can sort of wonder the classic, question: what can one little person like me do in terms of this big picture? Climate change is such a big issue. What can I do to help solve that problem? How do we help people understand that every little bit counts? The old saying, one small act can really help people solve, or put their drop in the bucket, so to speak, when it comes to helping the environment.
Well, our slogan at The Plastic Solution is "Plastic Free starts with me." So on the individual level, it's a ripple effect. For example, if I didn't answer this calling to be an eco warrior, so to speak, then I wouldn't have the opportunities to share what I know and what I'm still learning about, conservation and environmentalism. So I think, it starts with understanding the problem as an individual first.
And Gam, what's one small act that regular folks can commit to? Something small, achievable, repeatable, that you think will start us off on the right foot, and as Fiona put it, sort of ripple and create, start a ripple that will create larger ripples into waves, and hopefully something that will really make a big difference.
I think it's always to stay informed and engaged. So you have to really, take that initiative and step, to learn about the issues happening in the environment, following environmental organizations, and always remaining vigilant. And, it's always about holding people accountable, especially those in power that really needs, being in media and being on the ground. That's where the change really happens in your local local setting, in your backyard.
And
I think it can start with coming from something in tourism or leisure. It can start with just really regaining your awe for nature, finding ways to do that, and then nurturing the curiosity that comes from that. Because a lot of understanding roots from something as simple as that. That's definitely how I gained mine. And I would say always be vocal, always be critical. A simple share, we know how that has made a difference for Masungi. Masungi is still alive and standing despite all of the threats it's going through, because of its guests, because of them talking about the issue and demanding for a solution for the things that we're going through. So never take it for granted. I know there could be some level of fatigue because there's so many things that are happening, but us people on the ground, it makes a difference in the work that we do. When people talk, when people demand for better solutions and better actions.
Awesome stuff. It is great to have all of you on board. I love the combination of all the different ideas that you've thrown into the discussion. We can have this discussion for much longer. Unfortunately, we have to come to an end at some point. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you guys and just sort of drawing out ideas and jump off points from there. Before we end, this is of course Earth Month, a time when people are really sort of receptive and open to the idea and message that we all have a role to play in terms of the fight for sustainability, taking care of the planet. I want to give you guys, the last word, from each of you, just something to really take us out of the discussion and for people to sort of, munch on, digest, and ponder on further. Let's hear from all of you. A final word, perhaps.
I think it's do your research, understand, the current climate, so to speak, of climate change, and more than anything, I think is see how you feel after this pandemic, after this lockdown, this pause, and assess the things in your life that you've been living without for the last, it's been a year. A year.
Actually, a year and a few months.
Yeah, a year of this new normal. And I think what a lot of people can say is, I'm living more intentionally. Like there's calm, there's serenity, and there's the things that I need, right, and actually need, not just want.
If I can share, a great statement that I picked up from a discussion was, people aren't just saying, or we've learned to live with the new normal, but from this point on, we can really adapt to a better normal. We're at a position now. We're at the crossroads, and we're in a position to actually change and make those changes permanent. Gab, do you agree?
Yeah, I think especially now it's a very precarious moment where a lot of change can happen. It really just embracing and moving forward to this new normal. One thing and realizing and fighting for this planet, we have to consider that, it's not just about saving, the whole world, or it's like this isn't like a superhero movie. This is about a collective movement of work from each of us, investing in a community, working with your organizations, working on the ground. That's really the most important thing that you can do right now.
Absolutely. Well said. And take us home.
I like what Fiona said earlier in the conversation, that this pandemic caused us to evaluate what really is essential. What are the essential goods? What are the essential services in our lives? And I hope this pandemic has given us the opportunity really to feel what really counts as essential: air, clean water, the environment which we rely on. What we should be opting for really, is it's not abusing the earth for whatever we can gain for ourselves. The ultimate quest is how do we perfect the quest for sustainability and balance interactions with nature. And I hope that's something everyone can start thinking of. How can you do that in your businesses? How can you do that at home? There's still a lot of room for growth, for innovation. It's exciting. I hope we all pitch in.
There you go. I think we want to take a page out of your book there, Anne. I mean, if there's something that we should do, it is choose that one small act that we can all commit to and really just lend our support. We all have something to share, and I think we all have a role to play here. Guys, I want to say thank you so much. We'd like to thank our guest today, Gab. It was nice having you. Thank you. Also, Anne, of course, maraming salamat. And Fiona, the conversation we had today was very inspiring, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Now, I hope many of you out there felt the same way. And I know that I certainly had a great time and took away many learnings today. And Paolo Abrera, and encouraging everybody to commit to that one small act that we can all do to help save the planet. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.